with TestGeek Exam Prep LLC. We want to talk about some Series 65 test concepts today. A couple of concepts that you can expect to see on your Series 65 exam. First thing, we're going to talk about a couple of things today. First thing I want to talk about, of course, is Form ADV. Form ADV is used for a couple of different reasons for all investment advisors. One, it is the standard registration document for both state as well as federal advisors. Now again, remember, now I say this on the video course, Series 65 video course, every time you come across an investment advisor question, you have to determine which one they are. Rules are often different for each type of investment advisor. Okay, so anyway, Form ADV is used for the registration, standard registration for both state and federal advisors. It is also used, or at least part of it, is used as the Disclosure Brochure, okay, which you know by federal law is required to be received by all investment advisor clients. Okay, so let's talk about generally what the Form ADV contains. I think you should, or you probably do already know, that it comes in two parts, Part 1 and Part 2. And there's a Part 1A and a Part 1B, same with the Part 2. I tell people generally they're not going to get too specific into the different A's and B's. For example, the Part 1B is not used by federal advisors, only state advisors, but I generally don't tell people that that's a testable part, okay? Anyway, the first thing we want to take a look at in Part 1 is the general information about the firm itself. For example, its principal address, right? Where is the principal home office address? The form of business, right? Is it an LLC? Is it a C Corp? Is it an S Corp? That type of thing. Type of business that they generally engage in, right? Most advisors, a lot of advisors have specialties. Maybe it's a structured bond ladder, or structured bond portfolios, or stock portfolios based on modern portfolio theory. Maybe they deal solely in estate planning. Maybe they deal in solely financial plans, something like that. What their main type of business is. Also, information about the officers, directors, owners, partners, whatever you want to call them, right? All the information, biographical background, any disciplinary action that might have been bestowed upon them. But that's important because in an entirely separate test question, what you'll often find is a question that would be, who is automatically registered as an investment advisor rep? And of course, it's these guys, the officers, the directors, owners, partners, right, are automatically registered as IARs, investment advisor representatives. That's almost always a testable question. It's been on the test for as long as I've known, at least 20 years or so. Okay? So you might, when asked about the registration of advisors, might be asked specifics as to what Form ADV contains. Now, whether they ask Form ADV Part 1 or 2, I doubt it. I don't think it's that specific. It's asking for this information. And again, this is kind of a separate question all on its own about who is automatically registered as IARs. Okay? So you can expect to see a couple of questions just from that material alone. Also, we know that a portion of the ADV is used as the Disclosure Brochure. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the textbooks, practice questions, refer to the Disclosure Brochure. As required by the Investment Advisor Act of 40, which is federal law, of course, but is required for all investment advisors, both state and federal. However, on the test, I generally don't see or hear this phrase used at all. They might simply say, required documents. Or, since we know that the Form ADV Part 2 is used as the disclosure brochure, the test question might specifically refer to Form ADV, required documents, something like that. Very rarely will they ever refer to this as the disclosure brochure on the real test. The textbooks, the practice questions use that phrase a lot. The real test uses it very rarely, if at all. Instead, they will simply refer to the Form ADV Part 2. Okay? And again, we know there's two parts to it, but generally speaking, I don't know if any test question will actually ask you to distinguish between those two. However, very easy. What we charge, right? The fees. How we charge it and when we charge it, essentially. Okay? And Part B is about the reps and their biographical information. Some people say, B is for bodies. That's about the IARs themselves. Okay? But generally, like I said, I don't hear too many questions that are asking specifically to distinguish from Parts A or Part B. Same with the Part 1 as well. Very rarely, if at all, will they ever ask you to distinguish between the two separate parts. Okay? The textbook goes into a long, long discussion. There's practice questions on the different parts, but generally on the test, it's far more general. Okay? More of a 30,000-foot level kind of view of that. Okay? So, again, this is generally what they're going to be using in a test question that represents the disclosure brochure. So again, you got to make that distinction when you start reading test questions, right? We are hired by a client to provide advice and must provide the required Form ADV. That's kind of how they will ask it or refer to it on the test. They won't say we will provide a disclosure brochure. Okay? Also, they will ask, when is it required? And are we required to send annual updates? Right? Now that kind of depends on the state versus federal. We know there's a 48-hour prior rule for state advisors prior to contract date. Whatever date that is, let's say it's July 1st, right? So it has to be at least 48 hours prior to that, or the customer then gets that automatic 5 days to rescind the contract, right? They refer to that as a free look period. Okay? That is often tested, almost always tested, especially about the ability to rescind the contract. For federal advisors, it's at or prior to the contract date. Okay? Then, of course, are we required to resend on an annual basis? Again, it differs between state and federal. The state advisors do not need to resend it. State advisors, only if there are material changes in the Form ADV, which, there almost always is, or upon request, which it almost always isn't requested. Okay? So that, again, is the state advisor only if there's material changes or upon request. The federal advisor, okay, must resend annually within 120 days of their fiscal year end. that has been a testable question in the past, that time period, right? Generally, the answers will say 90 days from calendar year end, 90 days from fiscal year end, 120 days from calendar year end, 120 days from fiscal year end. Those are the answer choices, okay? That can show up. Again, this is for the federal advisor required to resend annually Form ADV Part 2, right, which is used as the disclosure brochure, okay? So, several questions all together. First, from the general statement for registration, and then also as use as a disclosure brochure, either state or federal, when it has to be sent, and does it have to be resent on an annual basis. These are all testable questions. They've all been on the test for many, many years. You can expect to see them, okay? Also, now, a couple other little concepts. I just don't like the way the textbooks describe these. So I wanted to take a minute, if that's okay, to help you understand, to put a little context around some of the concepts, okay? Which, you know, is easy to lose the context around some of these concepts when you're reading a 700-page textbook. So I like to, in my video course, in my live classes, like to put a little context around this. One of these is an investment advisor solicitor, okay? Which again is on the test, at least once, okay? Now, by reading the textbook, it almost sounds like this is an individual. When really, in the real world, it isn't. It's actually a firm, a third-party firm. I know many of these. I've seen folks in my classes that represent these firms. Okay? These firms are not registered broker-dealers, nor are they registered IAs. What they do, of course, is to affiliate with an independent IA, you know, like LPL or Commonwealth Financial. These are probably the two largest independent IAs out there for folks who like to open up their own little shop. Okay? So, we might have Podunk Financial, located in small town USA somewhere, right? But are affiliated with LPL or Commonwealth. Okay? They're kind of a branch office, for lack of a better term, of LPL or Commonwealth. Okay? So, when they are soliciting clients, they are, in essence, soliciting advisory services on behalf of LPL or Commonwealth or some other independent IA. So you see, these guys are soliciting clients on behalf of an IA. These guys are IA solicitors. Okay? Now, they have to provide Form ADV Part 2, right? Which we know is the disclosure brochure. So, Form ADV has to be provided. As with any other advisory client, that's no difference there, as well as an IA solicitor's brochure. Okay? Basically, just describing what that relationship is. Now, the customer is also required to sign stating they received this, and then we put that into the client file. Okay? So it also has to, the advisor brochure, the solicitor brochure, has to be signed by the client and placed in the client file. Okay? Also, these fine folks who work at Podunk Financial must register as IARs. Okay? Now, I know specifically there is a test question pertaining to the disclosure requirements, and I know there are many questions in practice material pertaining to these folks have to register as an IAR. Okay? I don't think you'll get both of them on the test. You'll probably get one or the other, generally speaking. Okay? So again, I hope that puts a little context around what an IA solicitor is. Okay? The textbooks, I don't think, make this very clear. So I hope that helps a little bit. That's really the biggest part of that, is that there's additional disclosure required and must be signed. Not to mention the fact they have to register as IARs. Okay? So I hope that helps out. Now, there is one other little issue, and that is for referral fees, client referrals. Okay? You might see a scenario where a CPA or an attorney or a mortgage broker or whomever, some other kind of ancillary professional, may refer a customer to us, the IAR, right? And can they receive referral fees? Yes. Okay? So, permitted. Now, that fee and what it looks like generally is the testable question. Okay? It generally is going to be a fixed fee. We'll pay all of our referral fees $500. It's a flat fee, boom. It's not related to the size of the client account or the advisory fees we're going to receive from that account. Okay? So, not permitted is the referral fee that's based upon size of the account. Okay? Now, again, almost always a testable question on this. Probably one. You're not going to get a whole lot of them. And they can ask it either from the positive or from the negative. I've seen one specifically based on where this was the body of the test question. A CPA receives a client referral fee that's based on the size of the customer's account, according to whomever. This is permitted, not permitted, something like that. So that would be actually the correct answer choice. Okay? So you can get it from either the positive side or the negative side. So, several potential test questions for you. The Form ADV, based on registration, as well as the Disclosure Brochure. Okay? And the ancillary question about the officers and directors who are automatically registered as IARs. Okay? Then, of course, a question pertaining to the IA solicitor. Hope that gave you a little bit more context. In the Series 65 video course, you'll also see that very same context, as well as the client referral fees. Generally, one question on each of these, and then several questions pertaining to the Form ADV. Okay? So, I hope that helps. Again, you can obtain the entire Series 65 video course on our platform, which can be obtained through the TestGeekExamPrep.com website. Any questions, comments, opinions, anything that you might have, please feel free to drop me a line, Brian@TestGeekExamPrep.com. Be more than happy to help you. I like to tell people, I joke about this, that I live but in the test world. I have no real life. So please feel free if you want to ever drop me a line. I also do some private tutoring via Skype. I've Skyped with folks from all over the country, every corner of the country, from Florida to New Hampshire to the state of Washington to California, and everywhere in between as well. So again, hope that helps. Hope to see you down the road. Take care. Get that P. Get this test out of your life. Take care. Bye-bye.